Welcome back to the Betsperts Golf DFS Show here at none other than BetspertsGolf.com. As always, I'm your host, John Daigle, joined first up by the model maniac himself. You also know him as the host of the Back Nine Bets podcast. It is none other than good friend in life, Byron Lindeque. Byron, how are you feeling fresh off the RBC heritage and amazing finish, quite frankly?
I know it was a pretty epic finish that didn't quite work out in my favor for many reasons, but it is what it is. You know, you can only hope to put yourself in situations like that. I'm doing pretty good, John. Happy to be on the show. It's going to be a fun, interesting week. I know Ron and I are pretty loaded and really excited for this week. So we got some interesting takes.
And I only got on an 8% Matt Fitzpatrick at higher stakes last week because of this man. PGA Splits 101 splits himself, as some call him, Ron Klos, because you suggested Fitzpatrick last week, Ron. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, and of course I didn't bet him. I mean, it's just, you look back at these tournaments and, you know, I was all over Cantlay. You know, Cantlay had such good course history there. And, you know, I knew Fitzpatrick's backstory. I knew he went there as a kid, and yet for some reason I just didn't pull the trigger on him, even after he gained on approach at the Masters. And it's so frustrating when you look back at those things and it's like, yeah, of course Fitzpatrick should win that. So, but that's golf for you.
And to win in that field, especially after a terrific Masters finish, that's super impressive. Something that was eventually coming for Fitzpatrick, given the way he's played of late. But moving on to the Zurich Classic here, a team event for this week. It is easy to gloss over, given that it's a team event. It's a weird format. I understand that, especially since it's considered a bye week for a lot of the top players till the next big event. But those that are there in Louisiana are very clearly there to win, since the winning team not only each receives 1.5 million purse, but they're immediately invited into this year's PGA Championship, the Century Tournament of Champions, and the Players Championship as well. So a lot on the line here. First and third rounds also for this event, a best ball format. Second and fourth rounds, there is a cut after the first and second round on Friday, but the second and fourth rounds will be foursomes alternating shots, with the top 33 teams moving on past that Friday cut line. So, and being a team event, Byron, let's start with the big picture strategy that goes into building lineups, since I think it's a lot more complicated than simply picking the best plays.
Yeah. So right off the bat, you know, when you have a team that's $11,100 and 3-1 in the outright market, that's a bit of a misprice there on the DraftKings side of things. But from a big picture perspective, I've kind of focused in and kind of derived a little formula where I've tried to highlight who stands the best chance to hide their weaknesses going off a certain tee set. Because there's going to be, in that alternating shot, you're going to have 2 rounds where somebody's going to be teeing off on par 3s 3 times of the 4, and the other person will be hitting 8 of his 9 shots as a driver. So if you can find someone that's really good off the tee, paired with someone that's really good from 200 yards plus, because you remember there's 2 par 5s in there as well. So 5 of that person's 9 approach shots are going to be 200 yards and plus. So there's a nice little combination that you can try and get there. And I've found some really big jumpers compared to like their average team score versus what you can get if you pair them up this way. So we'll be discussing those guys as we go down the board. But funnily enough, Patrick Cantlay and Xander Schauffele are one of the biggest jumpers in that too, despite being 2 of the best golfers in the field, which makes so much sense. So that's what we're dealing with this week.
I also want to direct everyone to BetspertsGolf.com before I kick it to Ron next, because I think you have one of the most helpful articles to dive into before building lineups. And it's available right here at the top, the 2023 Zurich Classic cheat sheet. And then by doing so, we'll take you to a Google Doc that is available for all subscribers to the site with basically all the notes you can squint to see here. I'm not going to open the doc since it's for subs only, but just know that everything from past course history to current form, everything you need to know to prioritize teams in this odd DFS event, it's right there for everyone. So Ron, go ahead. Your thoughts on this week's format and how to bid lineups for it.
Yeah, it's definitely a unique event. You know, a lot of people maybe choosing not to play this week just because of the format, and, you know, team is completely different strategy here. For me, you know, with the cheat sheet here, it just kind of, it's really hard to model, you know, obviously a team event when you have 2 players and, you know, each of them is bringing different skill sets to the table. So I basically tried to just kind of narrow in on the most important stats. TPC Louisiana, for example, approach play is huge here. P-dye course. P-dye is always going to play with the minds of golfers. A lot of water hazards, bunkers everywhere. Third most bunkers out of any course on tour here. So approach is really big. You have kind of wider fairways. There is trouble far off the tee, but the rough is not penal. And so really, it kind of boils down to an approach plus a putting contest. And so, when looking at teams this week, you definitely want to hopefully have at least one of the players be a halfway decent putter. Par 5 scoring is going to be really key this week, especially as, we get to the alternate shot part of the days here. Birdie or better is going to be huge. Obviously, that's how you're going to make progress, is if you can make more birdies than the other guys. So, those are all things that kind of went into the model, including another one. Proximity is really huge here. And like Byron said, the par 3s are all between 200 and 225 yards. And so if you can find at least one guy on the team who is really good from that range, especially with longer irons, I think you're going to find a team that has an advantage.
Well, let's get into it. And Byron, you already mentioned at the top on DraftKings at 11-1, Patrick Cantlay, Xander Schauffele, and worst of all, I guess for DFS purposes, the only hole you have to poke in their team is ownership, since they're going to be heavily rostered, especially as one of only 4 teams who are priced in the 5-digit range. So go ahead and give us your thoughts on those 4 teams and what you're doing around that Cantlay Schauffele ownership.
Yeah, it's almost going to be like playing Rainmakers this week, John, because I'm just going to probably lock in those 2 dudes and then try and figure out if I'm playing a GPP type, situation with 40 lineups or so, just lock them in and then throw in a few 10K guys with them and then try and get frisky with the few 6K guys, I think is how it's going to have to be this week. Their combination of skill sets on this golf course is just unrivaled. They've got that course history. They both finished inside the top 5 last week. Every single thing is pointing in that direction. Now, I don't know. Do you just play a fraction of them? Do you play them at field average? Do you play them double the weight, or you just lock them in? That's the question you have to ask yourself. I don't necessarily know exactly where it's going to be, but I think I'm going to definitely be going double the field on them, which is probably sitting in the 80% range. So I'm curious as to see what your guys' thoughts are.
And for the record, I don't think it's surprising that Cantlay's core card, so the very basic Rainmaker card you can get, the minimum price is $30, and for Schauffele, it's $24 in the DraftKings shop. Probably specifically for this tournament, prices are being driven up because everyone's going to play those 2 players in their lineup. Yeah. Ron, your thoughts on those 4 teams priced the highest?
Yeah, I completely agree with Byron there. I've got, and I don't know how much to trust ownership with just so many less people playing this week, but like right now, kind of what I'm seeing, they're kind of somewhere between 35 and 45% owned. And again, that could go higher as we get closer here. Yeah. So yeah, I think for me, I'm not going to lock them in to every lineup, and I'm going to play maybe close to 100 lineups this week. But I'm looking at, maybe 70, 75%. And I think their price is just, I was shocked that they weren't at least 12,000. And so when I saw 11-1, and you can pair them very easily with the Kim guys, Siwoo and Tom Kim, and you can still fit a whole bunch of halfway decent teams at the bottom there. And so I think you can get really creative by locking them in, where you don't just have to pick them and then you have to dip down. I think you can, if you can find some gems down there in the 6K range, which I think there are a couple this week, I think you can get creative with that. So they don't have any weaknesses. When I ran the stats that I did for the model, like they just outweigh everybody, even the Morikawa and Homa team, like they completely outweigh them across the board in just about everything. And then you have these other teams below them, and Sung Jae and Keith Mitchell, probably my next favorites. Morikawa and Homa, they're definitely the second most talented team. I don't think either is playing as well as they could be right now, and so neither of them has really had much success in this format in the past either. So I'm kind of seeing myself still playing them, but Sung Jae and Keith Mitchell will be my next group, and I think Thigala and Sue at 10K, I think they're perhaps the most overpriced group here. They certainly have tremendous upside. I mean, their birdie or better potential is through the roof, but Again, they're inexperienced at this event, and I just don't think, when you look just below them with Siwoo Kim and Tom Kim, I'll take those two heads and shoulders above Theegala and Sue.
Well, expand on that thought, because the Kims lead us off the 9K range at 9.7. So you clearly have confidence in that team. Go ahead and explain to everyone why.
Yeah, everybody remembers their, at the President's Cup, they were paired together. They had great chemistry. And, there is something to also of kind of looking at over the years when you have partners from the same country. I think that's another kind of intangible to look at this week when you have, two players who, are friends perhaps going into it. Of course, most of these players, how this works is, you had to qualify. At least one person on the team had to qualify to get in. And then that person got to pick their partner. And so, yeah, a lot of these guys, perhaps some like the Kims, know each other more than others. But just the chemistry they showed at the President's Cup and, just their overall skill set, I think really plays well at this course. You go down a little bit lower. Of course, Sam Burns and Billy Horschel have been, paired here for a few years. Great success. But again, everybody knows Billy Horschel is not at the top of his game, nowhere close right now. And so, it's just how far is he going to drag Sam Burns down? Okay. But then on the other hand, if there's any event that, may bring Billy Horschel back to life, he kind of thrives in these match play partner events. And so, I will play those two as well, just because I think even with Horschel struggling, I still think that's kind of a misprice. I thought they should be closer to 10K, even maybe a little higher. And then Wyndham Clark and Bo Hostler just right below them, another group I'll mention really quick here. They finished third in my model, which was actually a shock to me. Wyndham Clark has really turned it on lately. Probably one of the 10 best players in approach on the entire tour over the past 6 months. And then you got Bo Hostler, who struggles with many parts of his game, but is a great putter. And so I can kind of see those two complementing each other. And so they're another kind of maybe under the radar team that people should keep an eye on.
Ron also mentioned at the top of the show, Byron, about starting at the high 11-1 with the top team in Cantley and Schauffele, and then also stuffing the Kims at 9.7. Are you taking that same approach for majority of your lineups, and your thoughts on the 9K range?
Yeah, we're 13 minutes into this podcast, and I've agreed with pretty much everything Ron has said, which is quite ground-shattering stuff here. But I will go a little off the beaten trail and say potentially throwing in a Sahith Theegala and Justin Searle with the Cantley couple. I think that's one way to get a little different when you're going to see ownership being so crazy on those two top guys. They are overpriced, I do agree. But when I did my combination tee shot thing, they jumped 4 spots from 12 to 8. So there's a lot to be desired there from them, but I think they got some incredible upside, especially in that duo situation. I love Tom Kim and Siwoo. I think they're a great couple. I think, that Ryder Cup mentality is something that you can't go wrong on. And then some other guys that I'm kind of interested are Taylor Montgomery and Kurt Kitayama in the 9K at the bottom there at $9,100. They fourth in my model if you pair them up on the right holes. And I mean, those two are very explosive golfers. I think Kurt Kitayama is one of the best long iron players on tour, and Taylor Montgomery is one of the best, putters on tour too. And he's a really solid driver of the golf ball. So there's a really interesting duo there. Some serious birdie making potential as well. So I love them at $9,100. I think they are a little underpriced if you do ask for my opinion. So those are guys I'm going to be looking at in the 9K range.
I'll allow you to lead off the 8K range so you don't copy Ron's thoughts. And also, this is my fault. I should have asked it at the top of the show. Explain to everyone what you're doing for the formatting of your lineup, because it's possible that maybe people come into building lineups this week thinking I'm going to play just 3 teams. So 6 golfers, but 3 teams total. Are you diversifying from that thought? How are you building with that?
I don't think you can, right? If you put them into your roster, it will just kick it out as an invalid lineup. So you're going to have to play.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Yeah.
Someone in the 8K range I was like, what am I missing here? But no, I think I asked that question yesterday. So that's what's happening there. But in the 8K range, the 2 guys that I have, 2 Canadians that are great compliments to each other just because they're both beautifully well-rounded golfers. Adam Haddon and Nick Taylor at $8,500. Fifth in my model here. And they are like so evenly matched in skill and competency. I think they're going to be just a great duo. You can jump in on these guys that have these volatile differences in skill set. And then you also have guys that you just pair together that just are flawless, and they don't really have a deficiency in their game, but their upside is a little lacking. But that's going to come into play when you have to play one ball. I think the volatility comes into play when you want to get guys out there that are playing birdie every hole as many times as you can, or these Hadwin, Nick Taylor type teams will definitely come up the leaderboard as in round 2 and round 4 when you're playing one ball. So those are some guys there. And then Tom Hoagie and Harris English also, the duo there is just incredible. Tom Hoagie is one of the best long iron players in the field, in the world, and Harris English can really light it up with the putters. So if Tom's going off on those par 3s and Harris is putting the ball in on them, there's not a lot that can go wrong with that team. So I'm really enjoying those two. And then just a random team is Brendan Todd and Patton Kizzire. They're not going to see too much love, I don't think, especially because of Brendan Todd being in the mix there. He's not necessarily a game changer, but really good putter, and Patton Kizzire's got some of the length that he can really take advantage of par 5s on. So I'm thinking that might be a team you can get some leverage on ownership-wise.
Hoagie, of course, Ron, who we discussed as a volatile option, but still had a ceiling last week, and then checks in with 3.96 strokes lost on average at the Heritage. Was an absolute disaster and literally the core of my lineup. So your overall thoughts in the 8K range?
Yeah, there's some interesting teams here. Damon and McCarthy sitting there at the top at 8-9, both kind of bring kind of opposite skill sets as well, with, Joe Damon really good from tee to green, and McCarthy, one of the best putters in the world. So, their popularity is rising as we speak here. It's kind of up to, 17, 18%. Yeah, I'm not sure what to make of Hoagie and English. English is just kind of, blah lately. Just kind of can't seem to put it all together. Neither guy's been really good off the tee at all. And, I think people are going to kind of, especially maybe people who don't play as much, if there's anyone like that even playing this week, but, they kind of see those names kind of, may just click on them just because of their name value. And, that may be a group that I fade there. But my big core right here from this range is just below this. Like, I'll start with Nick Taylor and Adam Hadwin, and just really quick, you agree with everything Byron said. Other than Schauffele and Cantlay, they might be the biggest misprice here. I mean, these are two guys who have been performing very well. They finished 6th in my model. I also looked on that cheat sheet, kind of the OWGR, when you combine both players together, what's their ranking? They're the 9th best team here when you look at the rankings. When you look at strokes gained total over the last 36 rounds, they're the 5th best team in the field, averaging 1.1 strokes per round together. I just think they're going to be really a consistent group that you can, kind of put on your core and just kind of build even around them. A group I'll look at, and I agree again with Brendan Todd and Kizzire. I think those guys have some pretty extreme birdie making potential. They're actually 4th best in the entire field in par 5 scoring, which is going to be big this week. So I do like them, but go one below them to Sam Ryder and Doc Redman. I thought for sure they would be in the 7K range, and I was more than a little surprised to see them all the way up at 8,300. But they're a group that, when you look at team chemistry, okay, they've played together the last 2 years, finished 3rd last year, 17th the year before. So, flying under the radar right now, only about 11% owned. But I think that's a group to keep an eye on. Both of them really good putters, some of the best, like I just said, course history here. And so they're kind of a sneaky group that I think I'm going to be overweight on as well. And then just at the very bottom of this range, Chesson Hadley and Ben Martin. Ben Martin's been playing out of his mind recently. Chesson Hadley, very good putter, who's also been very good on approach. And so I think that's another group that people will kind of see, 8,000. I'm not going to pay 8,000 for those two. But, again, when you look at ownership, those two coming in a little bit higher, around 15%. But just kind of, I think, two sneaky groups there at the bottom of the 8K range.
Byron, I'll allow you to start off the 7Ks because now we're getting to the point where there are values to be had everywhere. Tons of teams in this range. Name a couple that you're prioritizing that you consider may have even win equity.
Yeah, Will Gordon and Davis Thompson are two guys that I think just, massive ball strikers and very volatile individuals. So their upside in the 7K range, I don't think they're going to provide you that much safety, but they're definitely going to give you that winning upside. I know we saw Davis Thompson almost win a tournament at the Amex, and Will Gordon's been flashing around the leaderboard in the fall swing. I love what they do when they tee off on the right holes. Scott Stallings and Trey Molinax, very similar situation. I don't think anyone in the 7K range is particularly going to provide you with anything comfortable. So you're pretty much just shooting for upside, yeah, especially if you're playing GPPs. Mark Hubbard and Ryan Brem are very intriguing to me because Ryan Brem is a very bad golfer, okay? But Mark Hubbard played pretty well at the RBC Heritage, and when you look at Ryan Brem's like scorecards, it's just these patches or hole that just absolutely nuke his score. He'll make like a triple or a double or something random. I think if you throw an additional player in there, that double bogey is out of the mix when you're playing best ball, and then that, you're going to have another shot from somebody else who can potentially save that hole in Mark Hubbard when it comes to that. And someone else that I also want to mention is Luke List. And I don't even know where they are yet, but his putting is really, really bad. Obviously, we all know this, but I think going into a format like this, where you can have that best ball mentality, where your birdie putt isn't going to be impacted by the 4-foot comebacker that you have for par, which is Luke List's biggest weakness. And I think if you can, he'll be rolling in a few more putts this week. I think he'll be a bit more aggressive because if your buddy's in for a par already, you're not necessarily too worried about making that 4-foot, 5-foot comebacker, which he's very, very bad at, as we've mentioned. And then one other person I want to mention is my South African squad, Eric van Rooyen and MJ Duffy. I have an outright on them at 150 to 1. Two very explosive golfers too. And, that nationality pairing, I think we saw Garrick Higo and Brandon Grace out of nowhere just play well here last year. South Africans are very patriotic, very team oriented back home, rugby, soccer, all that crap. So I love them as a squad.
Luke List and Henrik Norlander at 7,400 on DraftKings. Ron, your thoughts on the 7Ks?
So right at the very top here, we've got two European duos who I am pretty enthralled with. So you have the Danish group of Thorbjorn Olesen and Nikolai Højgaard. I think the word has kind of gotten out on this group because, they opened – betting wise, they opened at 66 to 1, and I think they're down to 40 to 1 right now. But from a DraftKings, like right now, I'm still seeing 14%, so not too bad. But people have not really heard much about Olesen. He has not played on the tour for a few years, really. He's pretty much strictly a DP World Tour guy. He's actually the 6th best player on that tour, so he's not a guy to sleep on. When you look at what he's done just individually, he's 6th place finish. Then he won the Thailand Classic. Then he finished 4th, 16th, 20th. So he's consistently finishing in these DP World Tour events really high. Of course, Nikolai Højgaard is a guy who came over here and is I think he got an exemption to play on the tour officially now. But he finished 28th at Valero, and before then he was runner-up at Corrales. So he's kind of got his feet wet here in the States. And I just think these guys are 4th best in approach. When you look at what Data Golf provides with their true strokes gained, it kind of takes all the tours together and kind of builds a profile for each guy based on how strong each tournament is they're playing in. And so those two are 4th best in approach, and they're sitting there at 7,900. They're 7th in par 5 scoring. They're 5th best in proximity from 200 plus yards. So I just think their upside is really strong here. And then just same price, you got Victor Perez, Thomas Dietrich. Of course, Dietrich is ultra consistent. Victor Perez is known to play really well in these partner match play type events. We're getting into, things like foursomes. So I think that team is another good value at 7,900. You got Harry Hall and Akshay Bhatia sitting there at 7,600. Again, two guys who 6th best when we're talking birdie or better percentage. So another group with upside. And then my other group down here, getting into the low 7K range, I think another underpriced group is Trey Mullinax and Scott Stallings. They are 12th overall in this field when you look at their world rankings. And so those guys I like. And then my last group here, another really underpriced group, sitting at 7,100 is Ben On and SH Kim. Those two guys, just very consistent when you look at their past performances, not a lot of miscuts. And so when we're looking at 7,100 here, again, two countrymen, I just think that's a team you can kind of maybe, if you're not comfortable in the 6K range, maybe kind of filling out the bottom of your lineup, and you can feel pretty comfortable with them making the cut and maybe in finishing, top 10, top 20.
I will allow you to get started on the dumpster diving, Byron. Anyone stand out to you below the 7Ks?
Oh, yeah. Let's get into the dumpster diving here, because I think Ron and I have got a team that we really want to talk about. And their name is Kevin Roy and Brent Grant. Right, Ron? They are $6,900, and they see themselves jump from an average power rating of 64th in my model to specialized, off the tee, optimization there to 21st. So that's like a 43 spot jump by hiding their deficiencies or their weaknesses in their game. Because I don't have it available right here, but like one of them is really bad off the tee and one is really good on approach. So like they complement perfectly, and $6,900 is a very affordable price for them. And then two other guys that also do this for me are Austin Cook and Andrew Landry. They go from 66 to 10th in my model, a very, very big jump. And it's because Andrew Landry is a very bad iron player. So I think he's going to be just fine doing his thing off the tee. Hopefully he can avoid, the iron play there. And then David Lingmuth and Jonas Blix, $6,300. Also very similar situation. Two very average golfers when you look at their game holistically, but when you compartmentalize it, they jump up that leaderboard a little bit. And then I don't know, there's not too many other guys that I'm necessarily interested in playing here. Aaron Badley and Harrison Endicott are two names that sound gross to click, but I've got them sitting 30th and 27th overall. So $6,600 there. And like we said, you're going to have to go into the 6K range if you're clicking on a Patrick Cantley and Xander Schauffele this week, because, unless you're going to eat all the chalk in the 7K range, you're not going to be getting that different. And I think the way to get different is being a little bold in the 6Ks.
Ron, 6Ks.
Yeah, Kevin Roy, Brent Grant, those are my two guys here. Like Byron was saying, so Brent Grant is the 9th best player in this entire field off the tee. And then on the flip side, Kevin Roy is 14th best on approach. And so, those two guys are going to complement each other using kind of the system Byron mentioned. Grant off the tee, Roy on approach on the par threes. Their putting is their big weakness here. But if they can get that dialed in, they should make the cut, hopefully. But just the upside they give here. And then another group right below them I think is really interesting is Michael Kim and Sung-Yul No. Michael Kim has been really playing really well. Sung-Yul No actually won here when this was an individual event, I think back in 2014. So he's got some positive history here. Again, you have another group of countrymen playing with each other. And so I think those two are they're actually going to be in a good number of my single entry, maybe even some of the 3 max lineups I'm doing. And then, it gets pretty sketchy as you get below here. When you get to 6,400, you've got two guys, Russell Knox and Brian Stewart. Russell Knox, typically, I think this might be the worst year of his career, but he's still maintaining a pretty decent approach game. Brian Stewart is another guy who won here. He won in 2016, the last year before it became a team event. So again, you're just trying to grasp onto anything you can down here. And so, that's an interesting thing there. I think you got a couple others down here with Chad Ramey and Martin Trainer. We've all seen Chad Ramey get off to some hot starts recently. Martin Trainer can be a birdie machine on certain courses, especially shorter courses. So not sure how he's going to fit here, but I think those two do present some upside. And then finally, we've got this Australian duo, Cameron Percy, Greg Chalmers. Greg Chalmers, if you don't follow him on Twitter, just go follow him right now. Was one of the best guys on there. We're trying to get him into the pit money here. But Cameron Percy, another guy, great on approach. Chalmers, kind of his strength is off the tee. And so I think these two guys who have played here before, they have some pretty good history here, actually, going back a few years. And so at 6,200, they're another team that's going to be on my radar.
We gave everyone 6K guy. Sorry.
Absolutely.
6K flat, because this is in the Ernie Els realm. Little pat on my back there from last week. But Grayson Murray and Wesley Bryan, they rank out as an average of 73rd out of 80 guys. But when you go off the tee there, they go to 57. So, I think Wesley Bryan is really bad off the tee. So I think if Grayson Murray is the guy that goes with the drive in his hand most of the time, I think they can be a very nice salary saver at 6K flat.
We gave everyone a handful of dumpster diving options. handful of top tier options. So let's close, beginning with you, Byron, on your two favorite teams that are not Cantlay and Schauffele and Grant and Roy.
Cool. I'll go with Adam Hadwin and Nick Taylor at $8,500. That's kind of like right in the middle there. So I'll do two more. I'll do Will Gordon in the 7K range with Davis Thompson. And then at the top, I'll do Sahith Theegala and Justin Suh at 10K flat.
Ron, same question to you.
So 9,700, we'll go Siwoo Kim and Tom Kim. Again, love those guys. And then I'll go with one of my European teams at 7,900 with Thorbjorn Olesen and Nikolai Højgaard, who should, I think, should finish in the top 10 this week.
Byron, tell everyone where they can find the rest of your work on the Zurich Classic.
Yep, at the Model Maniac is my Twitter account. I'm going to be pumping out a few articles. Yeah, for Rotoballer this afternoon. It's been a little bit of a slow week, but I'll have some value plays, some Rainmaker stuff. And I did another Rainmaker podcast with my buddy Draftmaster Flex on back nine bets for you guys there if you want to see that stuff. So nothing too crazy this week, but at the Model Maniac as always.
And I don't think DK even released their contest until Tuesday. So it's been a slow week for all of us. Ron, what else do you have on the site for everyone?
Yeah, DraftKings article coming out with a lot of the same thoughts that you've heard here. But yeah, if you're playing DraftKings, it looks like there's a good chance we might see some overlay. A lot of these contests are not even half full yet, and of course, it starts tomorrow morning. So keep an eye on that. If you have confidence in your lineups and in your process, definitely could be something for you to take advantage of tomorrow morning.
Ron's ownership projections also on betspertsgolf.com. as of Wednesday night. So keep locked in. Until then, until next week, when we get back to regular DFS to discuss, be a little bit kinder than what's required. We'll see you next time.